Indonesia has some 215 million Muslims. However, Christianity is the country's second largest faith and has been increasing dramatically in recent years despite outpourings of violence. Often it's where believers are actively spreading the gospel and the church is growing that persecution occurs. In West Java, many churches are harassed, forced to close, and in some cases even destroyed. The bulldozing of an Anglican church by the local government drew even the attention of the media. 3 days after the building was destroyed, members of the church came together to hold a service under a tent. Pastor Raman Saragi says the local officials gave orders to bulldoze the church to make way for a shopping mall and bus station, which is yet to be constructed. The local government also refused to grant the church members' request for another piece of land to build on.
The response from the government said this is not a Christian area, but a Muslim area, so you can't ask for that. The ruins of the church are still there. I think it's an excuse from the government to wipe out Christianity from the area.
Pastor Rahman says for 16 years there were no problems with the local people.
We didn't have problems with the Muslims or the neighbors around there. I was confused with the situation. I'm convinced 100% this came from the authorities in West Java who are trying to stop Christianity from growing. Before our church came there was no church, no Christian school. But many Christians came to the area and maybe some of the Muslims started to get jealous with the Christians.
On June 26, 2008, Pastor Rahman was in the church leading a Bible study class when dozens of officers from the local government gathered outside the building.
I was teaching the Bible. There were about 100 officers that surrounded the church, and they were shouting at us to get out because the building was going to be destroyed. The believers inside, including my family, resisted, so the authorities pulled us out one by force. Then they took all the pews, the musical things, and just threw them out, and they damaged them. When all the believers were outside the church building, I tried to stop the 2 bulldozers who were going to destroy my church. One of the soldiers on the bulldozer suddenly kicked my head with his boot.
Pastor Rahman is now holding services in the city of Bandung in a building where 8 other churches meet. While he's disappointed by the destruction of his former place of worship, the challenges have also had a positive effect on the spiritual life of his congregation.
On one side, we lost the building, but on the other side, this made the faith and spiritual side get stronger than ever before. The congregation had been taught that, like the early church, that in persecution, the believers become stronger than ever.
Under the hot, scorching sun, these Christians come together for worship outside their shut-down church building in the southern Jakarta suburb of Bekasi. The Philadelphia Hurriye Christian Batak Protestant Church was closed down only hours after it opened in December of 2009.
Around 9 in the morning on December 25th, it was a Christmas celebration, but outside the church there was a group of Muslims that called out to the Christians inside to stop the service. There were about 100 policemen and military men that were guarding the church, and about the same time the mob was trying to get into the church, but the authorities tried their best to protect the church building.
According to Pastor Pulte, the mob was made up mostly of people from outside the area who were determined to stop the spread of Christianity. Since they couldn't get into the building, they tried to disrupt the service by yelling at the 500 Christians inside.
We were terrified because we heard them shouting things like, "Kill them, burn the church, drag them out." Most of the women believers were crying at the time because they were afraid. And some of the congregation who came late couldn't get into the church because of the Muslim people made a chain and surrounded the building with hundreds of people.
Eventually, the mob dispersed after failing to enter the church, but just over a week later, members of the same mob returned. A group of over 100 Muslims blocked the entrance to the church grounds. Local authorities later sealed the site due to ongoing pressure from militant Muslims, suspending believers from using the building. The congregation met all the legal requirements to build a church, including obtaining approval from surrounding neighbors and community leaders. Yet it was still closed down. Pastor Pulte says they will continue to appeal to the government and courts to have the building reopened. But until then, they will hold their services on the street, even though that has been met with opposition.
They put rotten eggs on the street. They put a dead rat on the street to make it uncomfortable to have a service at the time. This persecution has caused our congregation to be united, but I can't say how long that we can stay united.
Over 250 Muslims gathered in front of the Bethel Pentecostal Church in Bandung during a Sunday morning service in January of 2009, demanding the church be closed.
There were some people who wanted to take advantage of the situation and to gain popularity among the Muslim people because of the latest tension between Muslims and Christians. These people were from outside this area. Even when the incident happened, some of these Muslim people knocked on the doors of the people here and said to come with them to protest about our church, but the neighbors didn't follow them.
And the reason for this is because Christians and Muslims here get along and respect each other.
The Christians are trying to make friends with the Muslims, and the Muslims are doing the same.
Pastor Jaman believes there are militant Muslims in the region that want to close down all the churches in the area, and they wanted to start with his. One of the reasons the mob gave to justify their demands didn't make a lot of sense.
They said, you can have your church, but many Palestinian Muslims are suffering. But I told them there is no correlation between the suffering of Palestinian Muslims with my church.
The mob was very angry, but didn't get violent.
They were yelling and trying to intimidate the congregation and me. They gave me a letter to sign that I agreed the church must be closed, but I didn't sign it.
Prior to the event, Pastor Jaman was in the process of officially registering his church under a new law with Indonesia's religious department. One of the requirements for registration is to have the signatures of people in the neighborhood show their approval for the existence of the church. They had 60 people, including Muslims, sign that they supported the church.
We had 60 signatures, but the Muslim mob forced the church to make another application and try to persuade the Muslims in the neighborhood not to sign a letter, but they failed. We got 66 signatures.
Pastor Jaman is married and has 4 children and worries about the safety of his family.
I have fear in my heart for my family because the leader of the Muslim mob has threatened my family, and I worry about them. A photograph of my family, my wife and children, has been posted on the internet on a website. It's making a problem in this neighborhood. They're writing false information, and I'm afraid that Muslims in this neighborhood will harm my family. A month after the incident, I received a call from someone who said if you want to have your church safe, you can pay us $500 a month, and we won't harm you or intimidate you. This person said he was in the group who demonstrated at the church.
Pastor Jaman ignored the demand. This event has caused his church to decrease in numbers. In the weeks that followed, around 100 of the 300 believers stopped attending, but others were strengthened in their faith.
I had been teaching my congregation about suffering even before the incident, but after that incident, many in the congregation were not ready to face the reality of being persecuted, but some said they were willing to die.